Excellent. Well, while we had you on the podcast, I wanted to just share with you some of the results. We every fall we do a Florida State of the Citrus survey, and we always ask growers about the varieties if they're planting, what are they selecting, and also rootstocks. And just thought to get your comments. Again, Valencia and Hamlin, even though they're sort of the standard, old standby varieties, they still are, I guess, within the comfort zone of what growers are selecting. Uh, if you have growers that are interested in some of these newer varieties, that's part of what you do, correct? Is to kind of work with them to learn more about what these other selections are and how they might fit on their grove. And one interesting observation is in this year's survey, the OLL line and the Donaldson tree has kind of made it into the conversation of the more popular selections. In the survey, we just listed OLL because some growers didn't specify what number, but the majority of those were typically OLL8. So it looks like those are getting some attention as we move forward. Any thoughts on that on those results?
Yeah, I understand growers sticking with what have been tried and true selections for them, combinations for them. It's common in many fruit crops where growers, and we have many multi-generational growers here in Florida, and I have the utmost respect, whether you're a first generation grower or a fifth generation grower, I have utmost respect for the desire to select varieties and rootstock scion combinations that have fit well in their cropping system for many years, or maybe a few years. So I completely understand the selection of Hamlin and Valencia at the top of this list here. When it comes to Hamlin, Hamlin 141, from my understanding, is perhaps the bud line that is most propagated here in the state of Florida. I have been watching Hamlin N1332, which is a Soma clone of Hamlin. It's uh, I would say a perhaps improved version of Hamlin. It's still Hamlin. There are very small differences between Hamlin 141 and Hamlin N1332. And my laboratory, along with Fred Gamitter, is trying to characterize those differences on a genomic level or a molecular level. But what I've been seeing in the grove is that N1332 trees appear to be, on average, healthier than Hamlin 141 trees in the trials that I have seen, and at some private growers groves that I have seen over my 3 years here. Now, there may be reasons for that. One of the growers mentioned that it might crop 1 year later or one season later. So maybe it's that particular selection is putting more energy into building biomass or building stems and leaves and branches and trunk and roots rather than putting a lot of energy into production early on. The trees appear to be healthier than 141. A quite powerful example of this is we have a city block just a little ways up from this little ways north of the CREC here. It's a 75-acre trial with many different rootstock scion combinations in there. Valencias, OLLs, different Hamlin selections, many different rootstocks. And first thing I did when I started here was starting to follow these N1332s. And over these last 3 years, pretty much all of the Hamlin 141 on X639 became so declined that the researchers studying them could no longer pull legitimate fruit and juice quality data off of those trees. And what did they do? They moved on to N1332s. Okay, N1332 Hamlins on different rootstocks. UFR4 is an example that seems to do really well on this N1332. And I believe UFR17 is another one that is doing quite well. So the researchers at my station have hopped from the industry standard, which has declined too far to really do legitimate applicable studies, to the industry unless you're doing some sort of therapy like Oxytet, or there are lots of different treatments that they're trying out there. They have moved on to the N1332s to do their research. Otherwise, their research would be rather meaningless on these trees that are 7 or more years old and no taller than I am at 6 foot tall. So we have trees that are 6, 7 years, and they're not even 5, 6 feet tall yet. In some cases, much smaller than that. And these N1332s are growing to size and filling their space in the grove rather nicely. And that provides and these trees, it's not just we have 1 tree or 2 trees in there. We have multiple blocks of 50 trees in there, and the researchers are moving into these blocks, so much so that I'm butting heads with some of these researchers while I am doing whole tree harvests to provide evidence to the industry that these trees can be productive, or at least give growers what they're producing on this 75-acre trial. The same with OLLs. OLL8, in my opinion, again, I've only been here 3 years. I'm not a multi-generational grower like some of these folks, but in my 3 years here, of all of the OLLs, and these new DC clones are new, and I've only seen them at one site, and they're doing a lot better than OLL8. OLL8 seems to outperform OLL4 and OLL20, it just across the board. That's my opinion over 3 years. So so the same story at this 75-acre trial. Growers have moved from Valencia standards onto the OLLs because the Valencias, after 7 or so years, have become so declined that the data that's being pulled off of those trees perhaps is not applicable to the industry when you have so few boxes, less than half a box per tree, in many cases, maybe 10% of a box in a tree. So it's, to me, that's some pretty strong evidence in this very large trial that these selections may have something to them. At one of the private growers that has these N1332s, the first year I was looking at him, he called me real early in the season, and so I said, John, you need to get out there ASAP. I'm packing these N1332s fresh. And he was able to do so. And I was able to pull data off of those. But there are growers who are able to sell these fruit as fresh as well. And so that might be another way for growers to get more of a profitability going. Maybe those coals can go, the ones that don't make pack out can go to the juice stream if that's possible. And then we have more income for growers. So I understand 100% Hamlin and Valencia being the top selections. I would like to suggest that if growers are so able or willing to do so, to maybe try a row or some of your resets or some of your solid plantings with this N1332. Or this N1410, which Jude, I've had with Dr. Grosser, I've had conversations with him, and I believe he believes that N1410 is superior to N1332 for bricks. This one is kind of newer on my radar, so I'm going to be integrating that selection into trials. But based on my data that I have currently, I would suggest that growers kind of dabble a little bit with some of these newer selections like N1332, maybe throw in a row or a half a row, and then you can see how this works. I know in the craft program, there are some growers that are starting to integrate N1332 into resets or these sorts of things. Donald, you mentioned Donaldson. I've been hearing, I'm one of my colleagues, Matthew Mattia, Dr. Mattia at the USDA. I believe he was one of the folks who really picked out the Donaldson there, and he's had growers call him saying that these Donaldsons are growing off pretty well. He recently said that in a meeting that I attended, and that is some great news. I'm hoping, I'm looking forward to planting some Donaldson at the 75-acre block as we reset and remove the selections that didn't work out, which probably comprise 30 to 50 acres of that 75-acre block, and to integrate Donaldson on different rootstocks along with the new OLL lines and OLL8 and these new Hamlin lines along with the standards that you'll see on this list, in order for growers to make the best decisions for their own cropping system.
Excellent. And one note is the N1332. There were a few growers within the survey that did mention that. So we'll make note of that when we publish the data as well. And moving on to rootstocks again, US 942 was, pretty clear winner of the selections, and X639, the sec number two, and then there were some other varieties or rootstocks that got some good selection play, but 942 still seems to be kind of the go-to, at least right now. Any comments there?
Well, it seems that growers have become quite familiar with this US 942. And again, growers, they often know what's best for their own groves, and they talk and they see what other growers are doing and how they're doing. And so I'm sure there's very good reason that US 942 is up at top. In our Eagle Lake trial, we have a MAC type trial there, where everything is on 942, and many of those selections are growing off quite well. At least up to this point. And so I really have no big complaints about 942. Since being here for 3 years, I've spoken, I want to say, to 50 growers or more, going to groves and talking to them about rootstock selection. Many growers believe that this is the best of the best right now. Some growers have mentioned lodging, where they say, hey, I have this particular rootstock and that particular rootstock in 942. My 942 lodged, my other rootstocks didn't. And then I have other growers to say, oh no, the roots are just fine. So I don't know if it's a site issue or a wind speed issue or what. But pretty much 942 seems to be a pretty good rootstock choice. X639 to me is also a good rootstock choice. Now, when I first got here, Dr. Grosser took me to a trial that was about to be pushed, and we had a bunch of trees on X639, and one of those trees was growing, I want to say 50% or 100% faster than the other trees. And Dr. Grosser thought perhaps this was a rootstock effect. So he snipped that tree, started putting up shoots, and I, with Dr. Grosser, we dug up, and I dug up that tree with my bare hands, and we moved it. We pulled DNA from it. We sent it off to a very high level laboratory, I believe the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory Group, and they took a look at it, and they said that they found some mutations in that particular individual of X639. So it's basically an X639 mutant. A grower that I am working very closely with has planted a solid block, I believe OLL 20, on this X639 mutant. They're growing off quite well. I'm hoping that it's an improved version of X639, which again is an excellent rootstock, and I could take growers to see this particular selection. I'm not sure if this has been released yet. I'd have to ask Dr. Grosser, but I think it's on this pipeline to be released if it hasn't been released already. I believe it's called STR 4-1 in our program and at the nursery that has been propagating it for research purposes. At Ori Lee was a World War II veteran and a Hall of Fame grower, somebody that I wish I got to meet. When moving into this position, I really wish I got to meet that fellow, because I hear he was an amazing grower and a huge supporter of IFAS research and USDA research. But he has some OLL resets in one of his groves that are on X639, and these are some of the healthiest trees that I've seen. And so it seems to me that OLL8 on X639 might be a good, I'm not making a recommendation here, but I've seen OLL8 on X639 produce a good tree, a healthy tree at least, that's growing. And as I gather more data, I'll have more evidence to say whether or not that leads to potential profitability. My graduate student, Emily Warbington, who's a Polk County resident here, born and raised, she's getting her master's degree. She's been following OLLs on with Oxytet injection on multiple rootstocks. Based on her study with that first year OLL or first year Oxytet data on OLLs of different combinations, OLL 8 on UFR 6 produced the most profitable trees. Now, there were 6 trees that we stripped harvested along with all of these others. So we're talking about 6 biological replicates. We got up into those trees. OLLs are quite juvenile in some cases, and so they can't have thorns. I was stabbed. She was stabbed. We were all stabbed and scratched up, making sure we picked every piece of fruit off of that tree. But it's from the numbers that I collected and the calculation, it appeared that there's a potential for profitability there. I presented this at the International Citrus Beverage Conference in Clearwater. I presented this at the CRDF and other places, and I haven't had anybody come at me saying that the calculations were off. It's a major extrapolation, right? We're talking 6 trees for each of these combinations, but we did strip them. We ran them down the packing line. We did all state certified testing, and we were getting some pretty good numbers for the Oxytet treatment. And so we're going to have year 2 Oxytet treatment data coming in this March or April, and I'm hoping that we see even better numbers there. But X639, excellent choice. 812, I hear on the ridge, 812 might even be a better selection than 942. They're both USDA selections, so I don't think I'll get in trouble for saying that. But I have heard a lot of people say good things about 812. I see plantings go in for Swingle. We don't know how this Oxytet's going to pan out in the long run, or some of these other therapies that are being developed. And it would just be a great thing if we can just start planting Swingle again, because wow, what an amazing rootstock that really drove the industry at certain points of time. That amazing Swingle rootstock. Kuharski, another amazing rootstock, and sour orange. I've had many conversations about sour orange because of this brown citrus aphid and tristeza virus. And there seems to be a diversity of opinions in terms of whether you should plant on sour. I talked to a pathologist A and entomologist B, and they say, no problem, you can plant on sour orange. I haven't seen a brown citrus aphid for years. And I talked to pathologist C and entomologist D, and they say, I see one every time I go out into the grove. And so, I'm somebody who was trained with the precautionary principle. I know sour orange is perhaps, in terms of quality, you can get some real high quality round oranges off sour orange, real quality fresh market fruit. But as somebody who practices this precautionary principle, I would not plant the whole grove out in sour orange, in my opinion. But again, that's my opinion, and people have different opinions on those sorts of things.
Excellent. Well, those were excellent insights. John, I appreciate you joining us for the podcast today, and we'll catch up with you again soon.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, Frank.